You are now listening to the Insight Fantasy Sports Podcast.
Welcome all and welcome back into the Insight NFL Podcast. We've got a massive, absolutely massive trade talk show to go along tonight, to go in hand with the massive amount of buys that we have. Buy apocalypse, as Secko, you've called it. We've got 4 teams on buy at this back end of the season. Yeah, absolutely hate it. It throws a real spanner in the works when I know myself, I've only got 2 trades to go, and I'm sure a lot of other managers out there in SuperCoach don't have a lot of trades either at this point. It is Wednesday, the 3rd of December. Week 14 is just a couple of days from kicking off. But Secko, we've been talking a little bit off air about this one for the last couple of days. It's going to be a beast. How do you find it's going to go navigating through these massive amount of buys we have to deal with this week?
It is, and it sort of popped up. It's really weird. We always knew it was here, and then it sort of seems like one key injury in there as well has sort of made it a bigger problem. Um, and with Trayvon Henderson being relevant again, he was bought in by a lot of people or held, and so it just sort of muddies the waters a bit with a number of people on buy. So yeah, it's weird that it's popped up. But there's sort of relevant guys across all the teams, which is also a little bit of an outlier. Most weeks with 4 buys, there's sort of one team that isn't really overly super coach relevant, but we're into it. We'll get deep into it. We'll go through all the main guys on buy or out or training to be out this week, and hopefully help everyone navigate through what to do with the last few buys you have to get through this week, and then the last 4 as well. It's not just this week, so plenty to talk about.
Hopefully you've got some cash in the bank just laying around to help get you through and give you some nice flexible options. I don't have a whole heap, but after this week's trade, I think I will make a bit of cash there. Before we get into things, if you did miss our Week 13 review and recovery, make sure to check that out. That is linked below. And with our normal injury segment, we will have that on tomorrow's show, the final show of the week, our Week 14 primer. At starts of the week, we'll give it another crack, Secko. We'll run through the forecast for each game that we have to dive through for Week 14. And as per usual, if you have any questions or comments, make sure to drop them there in the chat, and we'll try and get to purely just SuperCoach trade dilemma questions at the back end of the show if you are stuck and looking for a little bit of guidance. As per usual, Secko, we will throw up our unlimited winner for Week 13. It wasn't Mav this week. He did top score out of us 3. I think he had 530, but he was way off compared to where he needed to be this week. Before I do throw this up, this segment is brought to you by our good friends over at NFL Helmets Down Under. If you're looking to add to your man cave, Secko's got some nice jerseys behind there. I reckon a nice signed full NFL helmet might look good behind there, Secko, and these guys, they're the best place to have it. Head over to NFL Helmets Down Under. The link is in below, or check them out on Instagram at NFL Helmets_Down Under.
It's Christmas time coming. It's around the corner. If you're if your partner or family's asking what you want, direct them to NFL Helmets Down Under and pick up something nice. There's plenty of good stuff on that site, so check it out.
What a great gift for your partner, by the way. I know for myself, I could just see us. I'll get a helmet for me, helmet for her. We can put them on and just run each other head first, and trade to be in the NFL like Camp Scatterbo in there. But without further ado,
Camp Scatterbo style.
Just imagine. But here we go. Unlimited winner for Week 13. Big shout out to Couch Potatoes. Daniel putting up a whopping 595 points in what seemed to be a low-scoring week. And this point, it was best for 3rd overall in all of SuperCoach for the NFL. So an absolute cracking job. I think that's the highest finish we've had on any given week. And he can really thank the Seahawks pairing there for being just about a 1/6 of the whole points for the whole squad. But I'll run through the team here if it is a little bit hard to see. JJ Wetsock McCarthy as the loop option in quarterback. He's got Josh Allen on the bench, so he had those points coming through. Running backs, JT, CMC, Bijan, Javonte. He has Vidal and Woody Marks on the bench. Wide receivers, JSN, Rashee Rice, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra, Nico Collins, Ted McMillan. So with that Amon-Ra DNP, he'd probably get DK's lowest score there coming in. Tight ends, Brock Bowers, Howard Fannin Jr., Tyler Warren on the bench. Kicker, Jason Myers for Seattle, putting up a whopping 38 points. He had Loop on the bench. And then the Seattle Seahawks, My oh my, 60 points in defense. That is absolutely monstrous to get that any given week. Titans defense on the bench, and then he had Patty Mahomes with the VC, which he would have looped for his captaincy option this week. All in all, a lot of points there for Seattle in kickers and defense, Secko. It just goes to show those guys, if you hit on them any given week, you have the highest of the high, you can really position yourself well to be a weekly top scorer. So how do you feel about this team, and what's a couple of things that you'd change heading into week 14?
Yeah, look, not too much to change. It's funny. Daniel scored, what is that, 98 out of his defensive kicker. I scored 14. So it's a pretty massive swing there. But yeah, he's got a good team. It's good to see Wet Sock on field, even though he's doing his best work as looping in a score there. Um, and look, to be honest, his team is really solid. He's missing a key player here or there. If you had sort of, Trey McBride, it's an extra 20 points. I know it's easier said than done there, but instead of Fannin and Warren. But yeah, it depends on if he's playing for league, he may want to make some big moves once he's in the playoffs to maximise the team there. But CMC on bye this week for Dahl and Marks probably aren't your ideal fill-in starters, with Javonte already seemingly one short there. So I'd probably look to move a couple of pieces. Probably move Javonte, even though he's on field, and bolster that, and then cover with Marks or Vidal if Hampton doesn't play. But otherwise, we're getting to that stage where it depends on how many trades you've got and what you can do. And I don't mind. I don't mind what he's built there, and the team, obviously run by that. Seattle. It's funny that JSN score dropped out of all that as well. So some things are just impossible to predict. And JSN was one of those, and it will happen every week. So any changes you make, are open to being failures at the end of the day. So it's all with a grain of salt. But no, good team. Well done, Daniel. 595 is massive in a perceived down week like we just had.
Yeah, that's 110 more than me this week, and you would have picked it that the Seattle defense would score 54 more points than JSN, who's been the best wide receiver all year. So all in all, a great outcome there. Daniel, if you are watching this, make sure to get in touch, and we will be able to send you your standard squeeze 4-in-1, like we're doing for all of our weekly winners in our Insight Unlimited League. 670 members in there for this season. You absolutely love to see it. We will have some posts up on socials as well to get through there. Secko, trade talk show for tonight. Before we get in, we do have 4 teams on bye. By apocalypse, the Panthers, 49ers, Patriots, and the Giants. Plenty of super coach worthy players in there that we do have to try and navigate through this week. And we will be changing up the format a little bit with our trade talk segment tonight. We usually go through your trade outs, run through each position, and then same thing with trade ins and run through that position. But now we want to really try and highlight these players that are on bye. Hopefully, give you guys some nice options to navigate through the week ahead, depending on, we'll run through some scenarios depending on how much cash you might have. It's a couple of options there as trade ins, and also depending on the trades you have as well. So, Secko, from the top, we will throw into the quarterbacks that are on bye. We've got Jackson Dart and Drake May, both very viable, both heavily rostered in Supercoach at the moment. With these guys on bye, what are you looking to do? We could probably start with Jackson Dart if you wanted to go there. Are you looking to move him out and bring in someone completely different, or are you looking to try and leave him on the bench if you can and work at a different position, or how would you tackle Jackson Dart to kick things off?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously his roster percentage is still up there, and it's not just those that have tapped out that've had him for a while. Some relevant teams, top 10% teams. He's still double digit owned, so he's still owned by a lot of people. The good thing about Jackson Dart is his price is actually is really good. He's actually the sixth most expensive quarterback, so you can essentially move off him to Patrick Mahomes dollar for dollar. It's been a great ride by him. I think he's the third. He's the third highest 3-week average and 5-week average. I think he's the second, and overall average he's fourth, but he's behind James Winston, who's played 2 games. So he's been great. He's been amazing. He's actually the third best quarterback in Supercoach, which is unbelievable to think about. However, he's on a bye, and his game style has changed somewhat. He only had 27. It's his lowest score of the year last week. So, as I said, great price point. There's options actually off him, which is a bit of a strange one. If you've only got him in one of your starting positions, you can, as I said, straight swap him to pretty much anyone you want within a bit of reason. You've got a bit of cash, you can go. Josh Allen's a bit of a step, but realistically, anyone else is viable for less than 1.2 million. So if you've got Dart, it's time to move anyway. I can you just choose the best available, whoever you like the most. We'll probably speak about them in more detail as we go along, but quarterbacks have been well publicized. Almost at this stage is who you like best. Look at their schedules and decide.
Yeah, and also with Drake May on buy, Secco, he's not as at a generous price as Jackson Dart. He is about $1.5 million cheaper at that rate. Same thing with Drake May. You're not looking to keep him for the rest of the year, I'd imagine. You're happy just to straight swap him out. Like you said, he's better $1.5 million more from Patty Mahomes. I will jump straight into it early because I feel like it is a bit of an elephant in the room. How do you feel about bringing in Lamar for either of these two? I know it's been a massive topic of conversation. We've been absolutely smashing the drums to bring in Lamar over the last few weeks. I don't want to suggest it anymore just because of the amount of, kind of kickback there. Personally, for me, I've traded in Lamar this week. I've swapped Patty Mahomes up against Houston for Lamar up against Pittsburgh in his remaining schedule. I've made about $5 million in the process, which with my 2 trades remaining, I can navigate that and make those 2 trades really worthwhile down the stretch. So, elephant in the room, how do you feel about Lamar coming in for either Drake May or Jackson Dart as we head into week 14?
I think we're the only 2 blokes left in the entire NFL fantasy space that have any faith in this bloke. It's weird that we're on the same podcast, and I literally don't. I haven't heard anyone say a positive thing about this guy after what happened on Thanksgiving night. But your point's amazing. It's very well put. It's the money you can make off Drake May. It's $3.8 million. Off Jackson Dart, it's 5.3. It's a lot of money. What that means is for your future. So it's all good and well to go, I've got 2 or 3 trades. If you've got 100 grand in the bank, it pretty much means if you get an injury to a player, they're almost certain to lose money that week. And they're gonna lose value. And then if you only got, you know, 2 trades left and nothing in the bank, you have to go to a lesser player, essentially. Now you might get lucky, there might be someone who's also dropped. But an example is, say CD Lamb gets injured this week. I'm touching every bit of wood I've got around me. He's only 15.8 million now, and say he has 1 point and then gets injured, right? He's going to lose, another mil and a half, and he's down to 4.6. Now, if that happens, you've got to trade in Tet, Chris Olave, Terry McLaurin, Lad McConkey types. But if you've got 5 mil from doing that trade from Mahomes to Lamar, for example, you can get literally anyone on the board. So it just changes the dynamics a little bit. Money is still part of this game. Mav said it from the very start. If you joined us back, I'm going to say 18 weeks ago when we started previewing SuperCoach, he was massive on the cash is king. We're going to get him a t-shirt and a hat printed out for it. He harped on it week after week after week. It still holds true. You still want that money as long as you got trades left. So yeah, I'm same as you. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna be the one beating the drum anymore for Lamar. I've got him. I'm very happy to have him. Again, I'm in the minority. You're bringing him in. You're very happy to bring him in. Again, minority. But what it can do is you can pretty much go any quarterback you've got other than JJ McCarthy. Lamar is currently priced as the 23rd most expensive quarterback. And yes, that's on the back of a bunch of bad performances, and there's only one way to go, and we're pretty clear on that. But you can make money off him for your next trade and set yourself up in a better position. So I'm all for any trade that goes to Lamar, personally, but that's just me and that's just you. But if you can go to someone you're more comfortable with and make it work, that's fine too. If you got money in the bank, that is. If you don't, you almost have to go Lamar because anyone less than Drake May is unviable, in my opinion.
And we can't be, I think, so quick to forget how good Lamar is. Like, yes, I know the last 3 weeks have not looked pretty. 13, 14, and 14 there. He definitely is still banged up. You can see it. I'm hoping an extra week. They did have a short turnaround last week with that Thanksgiving game. They're going to have a bit more time as they do kick off early Monday morning for us here in Australia. That break does a world of good. They're back at home against a divisional opponent. Lamar loves playing Pittsburgh. There's just so much money to be made. I mean, Jackson Dart, very similar to Patty Mahomes. It's $5.5 million. Drake May, you're getting almost $5 million there from the jump. And I think Lamar, I don't want to guarantee it, but I would be surprised if he doesn't outscore Mahomes this week up against Houston. Mahomes also has Denver down the stretch. We saw how poorly he performed against them. Again, matchups aren't everything, but I think in terms of SuperCoach scoring, Lamar definitely has the highest ceiling there compared to Patty Mahomes. So that's probably all I want to say on Lamar before we get absolutely killed throughout the comments there. But all in all, if you are looking at it and you're not too, you're not too sure if you're brave enough to pull the trigger, Secko and I, we've got Lamar. We're still sticking our necks out for him. I'm still very optimistic. I know that's silly. I know recency bias in fantasy sports is just a heavy thing. We're so short-sighted, I guess, when it comes to, but we have to play the scenario for what it is. Lamar has not been good these last few weeks, but I think there are brighter days ahead. Hopefully his receivers got absolute tongue lashing this week and they can help him out because he definitely does need a lot of help with the Ravens there for the rest of the year.
Look, final thing on Lamar, you've said it well. He went into Thanksgiving off 3 days. He was already carrying an injury. Had a very, very short week into that Thursday game. Now he gets 10 days off to rehab and get it right. I think there's every chance that we can see a very different Lamar. We're going to cop it in the chat. We're already doing that, and that's fine. If you don't believe, you don't believe, and you don't have to take the advice. But yeah, recency bias has been very, very strong this year. Everyone's, McMillan was rubbish until he wasn't. There's been a lot of players who were completely written off. Lad McConkey, he was written off completely. And AJ Brown in the Supercoach space. Good players find a way to come back. So if you don't want to get him, don't get him. That's cool. But some people trading down from May won't have an option because they haven't got the money to go to anyone higher. And they're not going to go for Caleb Williams, Jacoby Brissett, maybe, but you still wouldn't. Jared Goff, Brock Purdy, Justin Herbert, you can't. Daniel Jones, Bo Nix, Trevor Lawrence, Kyler Murray doesn't play. Anthony Richardson doesn't play. Russell Wilson doesn't play. CJ Stroud, not an option. Like they're the next options below. If you haven't got the cash to go up, you cannot possibly go anyone but Lamar. So it's just an option. But anyway, I think 33 Poor Socks is going to leave the stream pretty soon. That's okay. It is what it is. We'll deal with that. You know, don't come back and tell us we were right either. Next week when he scores 50 plus.
We'll be here. Keep that same energy this time next week. And Secko, a couple of other options besides Lamar to bring in. How do you feel about Joe Burrow? He did lose $3.5 million from last week. I was very hesitant to see if he could just roll in after defying the odds and being the first quarterback to return after dealing with that turf toe surgery mid-season or during the season rather. He's got a 70 break even, so his price probably will come down. So if you don't need to trade in a quarterback this week, you could probably wait to see if he does come down a bit more. But he's got Buffalo this week, Baltimore, Miami, Arizona, and Cleveland. The Cleveland one on paper does look scary, but by week 18, they're going to be completely done and dusted. Myles Garrett's already have the sack record broken for the year by that point. They could be looking to check out. They mightn't be playing to that momentum. So all in all, the stretch run home is super plus, I'd like to think. T. Higgins, he didn't have him last week. He's going to be back on deck after the concussion. Reports are saying he should be ready to go with that late turnaround. So how do you feel about Joe Burrow as an option outside the big three?
Yeah, I think it's a great option. It's good to see him back. First week, he's got a plate in his cleat and still didn't look to be hampered at all. He goes off and he changes his shoes, which is great. Buffalo sounds like a really hard matchup, but it's not that hard for elite quarterbacks. Baltimore, he just played really well in his first game back. Miami, Arizona, and then Cleveland, as you said, will be potentially playing their backup. So yeah, I think he's got a clear run. The only problem is he's the third most expensive player in the game, in the quarterback ranks. So you've got to try and find the money. But if you want to, and he's definitely going to be a pod, he's only 2.5% owned at the moment. I like it. I think with Higgins back, Chase as good as he is, there's a lot of points to be had.
And another option there that Mav did touch on, Dak Prescott is creeping around. He's at 23.6 million. So again, a little bit more costly if you do want to look towards that range. He's only at 3% owned, 26 break even. Detroit, Minnesota, the Chargers, Washington, and then the Giants. So a very friendly schedule down the stretch. We know just how good George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb is. Throw in Jake Ferg. He's a touchdown threat as well when they get to that end zone point. Could do a whole lot worse. He's going to be playing a lot of domes at the back end of the year too. How do you feel about Dak compared to Joe Burrow, for instance, Secko, for the remainder of SuperCoach year?
Yeah, for the sake of $700,000, if you got it, I would go Dak. He's shown it. His only real horrible game all year, or since the start of the season, when it was a little bit different. He sort of came out a little bit slow, but was Denver in Denver. He only had 17, but then a 32 against Arizona, which from memory was a weird game. Javonte had two rushing touchdowns, bit of a strange one. Other than that, he's had 61, 55, 44, 46, 49, 55, 43. Super elite floor. I don't think Detroit, Minnesota, Chargers all in the dome, and then Washington and the Giants. I don't think any of those are going to be real tough matchups for him. So I expect him to be consistently in that 40 range plus, which has been his average on the season and 5-week average. So yeah, I think if you've got the 23 mil available from May or Dart, I think that's a good option. It's probably the best option at the moment, up in the upper price bracket.
Now, moving on to the running backs, we do have a couple of top guys out on bye this week. CMC, he's the number one here. Within the top 10% ownership, he is on 90% of the teams, which is absolutely staggering. He's definitely been the key to a lot of points throughout this year. With him being on bye, Secko, he's at 25.6 million. Again, he's definitely a player that you want to keep for the remainder of the year. Are you trying to navigate elsewhere with CMC? I guess it all depends on who you have on that bench, but how are you playing at CMC for the week ahead?
It does depend who you got on the bench. It also depends for me how many trades you've got. Just hearing around, a lot of people have sort of 2 or 3 left, which after this week will give you. There's 4 more weeks. You'd like to think that ideally the sort of max you really want to keep, assuming that you've got decent-ish options on the bench. If you do run out the last week, for example, 1 a week would be probably fairly comfortable amount of trades. If you got 5 plus, it is an option to trade him out to one of the elite 5 and then trade him back in. Again, you may get an injury there that facilitates that trade back as well, or makes it a requirement. So there is a slim chance that trade will actually be needed anyway on someone else. You lose nothing then, but it could really be a massive way to maximize. And sort of by the big 5, I think have emerged in the last few weeks. CMC obviously on bye, Gibbs, Bijan, Achan, and Cook. Cook's my new number 5. Because he's just going to get a lot of positive snow games. And we saw last week, cold, and they just put the ball in his hand. He had 32 rush attempts. So his whole profile has changed. He's just that good with that much volume. So if you've got CMC, you got 5 plus trades, you can pretty much go him to anyone, except for I think Gibbs and Taylor. Sorry, I've got Taylor. Taylor's in there. Taylor's in there. In the top 6, it should be in the top 5. Yeah, I think except for Taylor and Gibbs, you can go down to anyone. I'd probably rank them Achan, Bijan, and Cook. The guy's lower than him. If you've got a little bit of cash, I'd probably put Gibbs number 1, and then JT behind Achan, just because JT's got a bit of a brutal run. But yeah, there's definitely options if you want to do that. You've got the trades. Now, the next question is if you haven't got the trades, what do you do? And I just don't see a world you can get rid of CMC and not get him back in. So you're going to have to find the cover, somewhere, and it probably leads us on to the next trade out guy.
And that is being Trevion Henderson. And I know for myself, I've got both CMC and Trevion sitting there on the bench at the moment. Trevion's been a revelation with having the backfield to himself with Stevenson gone the last couple of weeks. Now that Stevenson, he was back last week, more integrated into the offense after coming off that toe injury. They split the touches pretty much. Henderson definitely looked like the better back down in the game, but again, that workload was definitely split. How do you feel on this one, Secko? I know myself, I've got Kyle Monongai. He's going to be starting for me this week. I've only got 2 trades, so I definitely cannot afford to get rid of CMC or Henderson. Again, it's not great to do, but if it's only for 1 week, I'm happy with that cover. You never know. He could get a touchdown or fall in the end zone. I'm sure a lot of other SuperCoach managers are kind of in a similar spot. We saw our week 13 winner, Daniel. He had Kamani Vidal and Woody Marks. You don't love to be in that position. Woody Marks up against Kansas City. Kamani Vidal looking to lose his job to Marion Hampton or at least split the touches there. But in these instances and not a lot of trades left to go, just going to have to make do with what you can at that point. But how do you feel with CMC and Hendo being out, and where else could we look to go?
Yeah, so I think if you've got CMC and Hendo, most likely options on your bench are Ashton Genty, Kamani Vidal, Quinchon Judkins, Monongai, RJ Harvey, and that's probably about it. Some people still have Bill or Devin Neal they brought in or someone like that, right? So in most of those situations, I think so Genty's playing Denver. I wouldn't want him on field. Obviously, if you've only got 1 or 2 trades, you don't want to force trades in just for a 1 weeker. But ideally, you don't want Genty on field this week. I just don't think no one profiles well really on the ground against Denver and in a divisional game. I wouldn't want to do that. Vidal has got a Hampton bag. Judkins is probably the best option if you've got it. So if you've got CMC and Henderson and Judkins, you can probably just put Judkins in and hold. Um, but at the end of the day, I still think Henderson's role clearly shifted a bit with Stevenson back and healthy. We hate to see that. His price at 16.4 is the absolute most he'll ever be. So if you're going to trade him this week or next or the week after to try and get someone in, I know he's on buy, so he's not going to change price, but you might as well just do it this week. You've got the trades anyway. Um, and sort of my thought process around him is it's only just 2. Is it 2 mil? Just under 2 mil to go from him, or exactly 2 mil to go from him to James Cook. Which if you've got 2 mil in the bank, I think it's a great trade up to cover you for the week, and then you've got whoever your 5th best running back is goes onto the bench, and that essentially buys you another trade. So you're actually getting a net negative out of that trade because if one of your starters goes down, you've got that other guy to bring on field. So I think it's a strong play for 2 mil. If you haven't got that 2 mil, it leads us to the next level or the next question. Where do you go? And there's options, galore. I know there's a guy that you've loved all year, and we finally saw him back, and we saw him back playing at a pretty elite level straight away. So there's only one way up for him, and that's Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving's actually only $200,000 more. I think most people would have that at least 200K in the bank. Very rare to go down to a $0 in the bank situation. I think Bucky's a great pod play this late in the season to bring him in. He can really dominate down the stretch. Their run home is phenomenal as well. Just looking into it, it's the Saints, Falcons, Panthers, Dolphins, and then Panthers again. There's every chance him at full fitness can be huge. And a couple other guys we've spoken about before this season. Derrick Henry, cheaper, or the same price as a little bit more than Bucky, and Josh Jacobs is still there. He's back to full fitness and around that same price. So there is good options. I think that's the play. If you've got CMC and Hendo, look to trade Hendo and cash in on a fifth running back primo.
Bucky Irving is the clear number 1 option for me if I was dealt with that dilemma and needed to move off Henderson. Only 200K. I definitely had that in the bank ready to go before my trade was made. Came up his first game back in what felt like forever. I think it was 10 or 11 weeks. Put up 30. Doesn't look like he's missed a beat. And that run home, all he needs is a few touchdowns down that stretch. He's had all this time to get healthy. This is the greatest time of the year for these running backs to be fit and ready to go. things are just going to start taking off for Bucky, and I think he could really edge himself into that top 6 at the end of the season down this final stretch there. Plenty of options if you do have CMC and Hendo in your running back position with both of those guys on bye. Wide receiver, Secko, we've also got a couple of key guys on bye or injured this week. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, it hasn't been completely ruled out that he will miss the Thursday night game up against the Cowboys, but with that short turnaround and that ankle injury, we know he exited the game straight away when that took place in Thanksgiving against the Packers last week. Not good signs when a massive offensive lineman falls on the back of your ankle. Amon-Ra is tough as nails. That's probably the best advantage that he's got to get through this injury for this week. But even still, tread with caution. He may not perform as well as what we would like to. And even still, he's not a certainty to return next week if that is the case with that ankle injury. So, Secko, with Amon-Ra potentially being injured, missing this week, maybe even next, what are you really looking to do? I know Amon-Ra, for me, he's in my team. I've got him sitting on the bench. Sadly, I've got Justin Jefferson sitting in his spot, which I absolutely hate looking at after he's put up a massive 2 points last week with Max Brosma, who will probably never get a start in the NFL again after that. But Amon-Ra, he is a keeper at the back end of this year. And if he only misses 1 or 2 weeks, we could probably make do. Hopefully, you've got some coverage there and guys that aren't on bye. But say you've got the next guy that we have in Tet McMillan on bye and Amon-Ra, you're caught in a very hard place there. So with Amon-Ra, what are you looking to do looking forward ahead in week 14?
It's tough. I really thought Amon-Ra would be okay, and he's the kind of guy to push to play. But he was interviewed, which is weird. Injured guys aren't usually interviewed, but he was interviewed yesterday. He just sort of made it sound like he, is out of his hands, which generally indicates that they know they're not going to play. The team's pretty much told him. I think Dan Campbell's the kind of guy to say, "We've got bigger aspirations. We can cover you for 1 week. We can't cover you for 6." So I feel like he's going to miss. So I think preparing for him to miss is the right play. Now, a lot of people will have Amon-Ra and Tetaroa. McMillan, if you have that situation, you're likely going to have someone like Justin Jefferson, or to a lesser extent Rome Odunze or Igbuka. All of them, for whatever reasons, are not performing amazingly, and the confidence level to start one of them is pretty rough. So I'd almost suggest that you have to trade someone if you're in that situation. Now, Amon-Ra, I think, is a definite hold on his own, just because I think it's more likely to be 1 week than anything else. And you still got him for 4 more. And again, once you trade him out, you can probably get him back because he's not too expensive. I think he's only around the 16.5 mark. But you still would prefer to not use a trade to get him back in later when he goes ballistic down the stretch. So remember, all dome games for Detroit as well. So that's where him and Jared Goff really shine. And I think he'll be back. So long way of saying Amon-Ra is just a hold. I don't think you can do anything with him. But what you can do is Tetaroa McMillan. If you've got him, he's the one, in a similar way to Henderson being the one when you hold CMC. Tetaroa is the one to trade at his $14 million to get to someone that can cover Amon-Ra and be a better bench position than when Tetaroa was there. So yeah, I think there's options. We're probably, we can talk to the specifics. It all depends, again, how much money you have, and we've said it before and we'll harp on it again. It is very much about a money position. So you want to make sure that whatever trades you're doing now are either to make money for future trades or to cash in on that and go a Tetaroa up to someone better. And someone better depends on who you've got. JSN's probably too expensive, but there's Rushy Rice, Jamar Chase. They're both within 3.5 mil of Tetaroa McMillan. Devontae Adams is an option. You've got Puka still there, CeeDee Lamb still there, Nico Collins. Puka, CeeDee Lamb, Nico Collins, all within $2 million of Tetaroa. So if you've got the cash and you've got Tet, I think you just go up and get someone and again strengthen that wide receiver 7 spot when Amon-Ra comes back.
And even if you do have plenty of trades and you are looking to trade Amon-Ra, I know we've got a comment there in the chat from Jack. We'll get to this one now. Would you trade Amon-Ra to CD? And I think absolutely, if you had 5 or more trades, like you mentioned, Secko, at the start, if you've got those luxury moves and your luxury moves available, and you're really playing for that top score overall in the season, Amon-Ra to CD, they're in that same tier, that same caliber of player. You're gonna bank about 400 grand in return, and you can just look to bring Amon-Ra back in when he does come healthy. You can definitely do that. Same thing with Puka Nacua. He's at absolute basement price at the moment, 15.81 million. The last few games, they just have not needed him whatsoever except Carolina. They had the JC Horn experience, and they just could not get anything going in that regard. Devontae, of course, getting all the touchdowns, but the run home for Puka and the Rams, they've got Arizona this week in a divisional matchup. You love that one. Detroit next week, they're going to be able to push the ball a whole heap. They've got Seattle again. Puka, he didn't do too much against Seattle when they played a few weeks ago, but it was a very different game back then. Seattle couldn't really get the ball going whatsoever, and they didn't really need Puka. Then Atlanta and Arizona to close things out. So a very friendly schedule down the stretch for Puka if you can bring them in. And also CeeDee Lamb, of course, he's going to be lights out with Dak under center. Tight ends, Secko, we can jump straight ahead onto there. A couple of big guys on by. George Kittle, the biggest name, of course. He's in that top three that we have as our kind of end game positioning. Kittle, Bowers, and McBride, they're the final three that you really want to end up with. Kittle is at 15.7 million. He did increase after the last couple of weeks. He's got a 45 break even. So again, that's probably his average or where he's going to be sitting once he comes back in. Massive touchdown threat with Brock Purdy. The run home is just magnificent. Tennessee, the Colts, the Bears, and then the Seahawks. So you really love that stretch of 4 games, really for all the 49ers players, CMC in there as well. But with Kittle, again, depending on the trade situation, let's say you've got under 5 trades and you've just got him on your bench. You're just really hoping at that point that you do have some coverage, maybe a Fannin Jr., maybe a Darren Waller. You'd be happy to stream him, but how are you playing out Kittle if you do not have the trade suite?
Yeah, again, the same principles applies. If you've got heaps of trades, you could potentially go in and out for him. But I think tight end's the kind of position, and it's been that way all year long, that you can probably um, cover better than any other position just with the guy on your bench. Now that's assuming the guy on your bench is playing and playing somewhat decently, and not a complete, not Cole Pitts, for example. Um, easy jab at Cole Pitts there because I could, but yeah, there's a bunch of dudes that are highly owned who I can't imagine are on field for people. Tyler Warren could be, but I don't think he should be. 60% owned, which means he's in a lot of tight end twos, or tight end 3 slots. He's a good 1 weeker. He's probably not going to have a monster, but a good fill in. Waller's 20% owned. He was held over through his injury. He's a great option actually against the Jets this week. Colston Loveland, 16% owned. He can be an option to come in for a week. Gadsden's been a bit down. I still don't hate the option because tight ends are just pretty much pot luck half the time anyway, and that's it's the suckiest position for that reason. You've also got Fannin, Ferguson. There's a bunch of guys who I don't think should be in your tight end 2 spot who are on a lot of rosters. So long way to say Kittle can go on the bench, and anyone you've got there that's playing can come on. Now the issue is if you have a non-playing tight end, um, you're sort of a bit stuck, and you may have to just trade Kittle out and find the best option. And you know, it may be a position where you look to make money now and then use another trade later to make it back. It's a bit of a gamble there. It depends how many trades you've got. If you've got plenty of trades, you can definitely trade him out for someone. If you've got trades and money, he's go up to one of the two you haven't got out of McBride and Bowers, and just let it go there because they're clearly the ones you want. But other than that, we've sort of said it all year. It's hard. It's sort of those 3 guys: Daylight, probably Kelsey next, and then Daylight, and then a bunch of dudes. Um, Kelsey is cheaper than Kittle by almost 3 mil. So almost 2 mil. So if you want to do that, make a little bit of cash, get Kelsey in. It may be an option. But I honestly think if you have to start someone, if you have to trade someone because you just can't start the guy on your bench due to whatever reason, you may be better just to go down, make the cash, and then try and make some money up later on with a future trade. Just again, tight end is just a bit of luck outside of the best guys. The best of the best are great, and the rest of it is, did they catch a touchdown? If they did, you're happy they're in there. And guys like Waller, Warren, Loveland, Fannin, Gadsden can all catch touchdowns anytime. Jawan Johnson's in that bucket as well. There's a bunch of dudes that you can start any given week and get a better score than Kittle, Bowers, and McBride.
If you do need to make that trade and you have plenty of them banked up, Kittle down to Brock Bowers. If you don't have him ready, bank $1.5 million. You can keep that for next week. You can maybe try and work it around and get up to Trey McBride if you don't have him at 19.6 million for McBride. That's going to be a very, very tough pill to try and swallow if you don't have that cash or don't have him there. I'm looking at it here. I'd be very, very optimistic in thinking that I could bring him in. But looking at Kittle and Bowers, I'm rolling Fannin Jr. at this point of the year in relief for Kittle. If he gives me 20 points, that's okay. So be it. It's not going to kill me. It's going to help me get through to the next week anyhow and save a trade. If you do need to go cheaper, if you don't have that cash and you think, you know what, I just need to bank a little bit more in the process, I think Darren Waller is the number one for myself that I'd be targeting. Definitely has the most touchdown upside. He only played 50% of the snaps coming back after missing 7 or so weeks with that injury. Only had 11 points up against the Saints, but the run home is very, very juicy. The Jets, the Steelers, the Bengals, the Bucks, and also the Patriots, all plus matchups for that tight end position. And a lot of those games are in Miami because we know Tua, when it gets cold, he's an absolute house cat and does nothing. So if you want to bank a whole heap of money going from Kittle down to Waller, if you've got those trades and then look to bring in Kittle next week, that's definitely the position that I would be looking to go with that. Defenses and kickers. Oh no, you go, Secko.
One more quick thing on Waller. So Waller's averaging 22.8 on the season. Brock Bowers has scored more than 22.8 or 23 points. We'll say 22 points only 3 times. So that's where you sort of get it, it's, you think these studs, even George Kittle's only outscored 24 on 2 occasions out of his 8 games. So these tight ends, that they can score well, and McBride's probably the outlier. That's why he's 20 mil, because he actually is a guy who scores high all the time. But for a 1 week fill in, or even for a short term, fix, Waller can score, potentially can score as well as some of these guys. Probably won't do it over the course of all 5 weeks, but he can definitely do it for a few weeks. So it sounds gross and looks a bit wrong, but for 8 mil in the bank, it might be just the right play to help you going forward.
And kickers and defenses, Secko, will loop these guys in together. We've got Borogalis for the Patriots. He's probably the only SuperCoach relevant player that is on the bye this week in that position. He's at a cool 11 million. You can do a whole lot with that this week. Hopefully you aren't running a loop kicker option this week, because then you can save that trade. Just leave Borogalis on the bench. Hopefully bring in your bench kicker there. But if you are running that loop option, Secko, what are we kind of left with? I know, again, it's hard burning trades on kickers, but if you are in that position, those kickers, they could still give you 20, 30 points any given week, which could be the difference from you finishing in the top 50 or even the top 5 for the week in, week out. Could be the difference you winning a standard squeeze for our weekly unlimited winner. In purely with the kickers, we saw the winner this week. He had Myers putting up a massive 38 points. Again, it is a valuable position, but we don't want to be just looking at just this case scenario. So how would you play out Borogalis in this one?
Yeah, it's a great point you bring up. But yeah, I've sort of seen people on social media sort of mention, oh, it's okay, you've got the flex, so it's okay going one short into the week. But what happens if that flex, if JSN scores you 6, his score can't drop out now, and you're stuck with it, right? So you want to make sure you've got every position filled as best you can, and if you've got the trades there, and you've got Borogalis and a loop player, you may as well just do the trade, because it's not like Borogalis is a must keep either. He's very expendable. The good thing about Borogalis is that he's played really well to the point that he's the 8th most expensive kicker. He's over 11 mil. So you can pretty much have your pick without having to. You actually make money out of the kicker trade, which is rare and not something that you should have, you probably have planned to do. But the one that stands out to me, the guy who was on everyone's sort of radar early in the season, for obvious reasons, he's very good at what he does. But it's Brandon Aubrey of the Dallas Cowboys. He's dropped down to $9.9 million. So you're actually making over a mil going down to him, which again is valuable money. We said it throughout. That $1 million that you're banking on this one trade, maybe the difference next week on getting CD Lamb or having to settle for a Chris Olave. Which just think about that. It's a big difference in your last trade potentially you're going to use next week or the week after. So it's positive cash, but he's the best kicker in footy. People were talking about paying what price was he, like 15 mil at the start, I think, or something like that. 14 point something. He was ridiculously overpriced because he had a great year, but he doesn't miss many shots, which is fantastic. We've said it with Dak, we expect them to score a lot. They are scoring a higher rate of touchdowns than they were last year, so that's Bordy's score down because they're not settling for field goals. They're a bit more efficient, a bit more productive. But we said it. Next three in a dome, perfect for kickers. They're all against opponents that I think are good opposition, good offenses, for the most part anyway. Detroit, not Minnesota, so obviously scrap that. But Detroit and the Chargers, so two of the next three in domes against teams. I think they're going to put scores up, which means they're going to have to put the foot down and keep scoring. Shootout types. I think Aubrey for that can be massive. Last two games against Commanders and the Giants, both horrible defenses. There's your option there. It's easy, make some money, get a good kicker, and ride him through the last five.
Even better, getting a bit more cash on top if you do have to make that trade. And with defenses, Secko, very similar situation. We've got the Patriots who have been a favorite this year. They're probably the only startable one that we have here in this list. We've got the 49ers who are making a little bit of a comeback the last couple of weeks, but we know just how decimated they are on that defensive line and probably not a season-long keeper at the back end. I know for myself, I'm happy to roll. I've got the Patriots and the Ravens. I'm just going to roll between those two teams, depending on the matchups each given week. But if you do have two of these, unfortunately, if you are stuck with the Patriots and the 49ers, you really can't leave this position just to let it go. Hopefully, you've got a little bit of cash so you can move the 49ers to a more startable option to get you down the stretch. If you don't, though, have that cash, there is a couple of cheaper options as well, Secko, that you can bring in. How do you feel about cheaper options if you do want to downgrade from the 49ers? I mean, looking at it, it's tough. Very, very basement prices, but Washington at 3.6 mil, they do have Minnesota this week, the Giants the next week. They could probably get you through that 2-game stretch. You make a couple of million in the process, it's very gross, but if you are just looking at the next 2 games, Washington could be a very sneaky one. It'll be a hard watch, but we know just how hard or even harder of a watch it is watching JJ McCarthy sling the ball in that matchup there. So how do you feel about the Commanders, and then any other options to bring out if you say you do have a couple of million in the bank and moving away from the 49ers, for instance?
And so the 49ers, they're in a tough spot because the defenses sort of below them in price are not performing amazingly well. Um, I still think Kansas City's a sneaky good option. They're a good defense. They do force teams to throw against them, but their own home's actually really good. They've got Houston this week, who are known for their defense. Could definitely be a sort of low scoring defensive struggle kind of game. Chargers with Herbert with a broken hand, um, at home though as well. Chargers, Kansas City always do really well in division games at home. They've got Cam Ward the week after that. Could be huge in week 16. They've got Bo Nix in Denver at home. Again, divisional at home. And then they've got Geno Smith the last game. So they're only 4.8 mil. They're actually 600,000 less than San Francisco. If you've got them and you're forced to trade, say you've got New England and San Francisco, you can trade them down to Kansas City, make more money. It's going to be a bit gross, but you're going to get New England back the next week. If you don't want to start Kansas City against the Chargers, for example. Again, defenses are mostly an absolute crapshoot. Everyone was clamoring to get Minnesota for a long time there. they're now the fourth cheapest defense. They've lost so much money, I think almost 7 mil in the process. So you just don't know what defense is going to do. Mav, well documented, picked up Seattle, um, one of the highly touted defenses of the time. He paid up a little bit for them as well at that time from memory, over 10 mil, and they had 4 and then an 8 against Tennessee. They got an 8. So you just never know. You want to play the money game a little bit here as well. If you have to trade them out, um, San Francisco down to Kansas City seems like the right choice if you're not going to go down to the bottom price Commanders again for 1 week only. New England opens up a few more options. If you've got New England, you want to trade them out. You've got some, again, equally as gross sounding options, but the Saints have a great run home, and so do Miami. They're both around the same price as the Patriots. So, and finally, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay have a great run home as well against some truly horrible teams and quarterbacks like Shuck, Cousins, Young, Tua, and Young. So yeah, there's options. You don't want to be trading there, but sometimes you're forced into it. Make sure you're not going up. You're not burning all the money you've made for your future trades by going up to a Denver or someone like that, because it's just not the right use of money, given how random and volatile that position is.
Plenty of options there throughout our trade talk segment for all of the guys who are mainly on buy. 4 teams on buy this back end of the season. I said at the start, it's a hard one to try and navigate, but there's plenty of nice players there that you can either downgrade from to make some cash, or even if you've got a little bit in the bank, you can spend up and lock in a rest of season starter for the final 5 weeks of the year. Let's talk captains, Secko. We've got plenty of good options to kick things off for us. If you are looking at a nice VC option, I know myself, I love targeting the game to start off the week. Gives us a couple of days over the weekend to plan out and see whether we want to run that VC loop score, or if we want to try and position ourselves with a straight captaincy option if those guys don't pan out. The top one that I will start us off with that I absolutely love in this matchup, CD Lamb, Thursday Night Football in a dome against Detroit in the highest over-under of the week. Detroit, we saw what they did last week with the Packers in a much lower tier in terms of wide receiver caliber. Wicks and Watson absolutely teared these guys up. They had just over 170 yards, 3 touchdowns. There's a massive difference between Dak and Jordan Love as well and what he can do. CD and George Pickens, those guys, they just keep opening things up for one another. Dak is playing at what I think at an MVP level, but just that win-loss just isn't there. And we know if you're not playing on a winning team and number 1 seed in your conference, you're really not going to have a good chance to get the MVP this year. Detroit are also super banged up on the defensive front. We've got Terry and Arnold, one of their star corners, is on the IR, and they're playing with a couple of backups there. And CD Lamb coming off a big game against Kansas City and a big win. I think they'll look to repeat this week, and even better, it's on the first game of week 14.
I think it's a great spot. Yeah, I'm with you. The Thursday night game, just seems like the right place. Also, you got to watch who your loops are or who your loop player is. There's a lot of teams obviously playing in the 5 o'clock or the 4 a.m. your time, Mel, 5 a.m. down the south on the Monday morning. So you got to make sure if that's who your loop player is. Obviously, you've got CMC if you're keeping him and guys like that as well. You can do it, but you still want to make sure you've got all that set up. And you don't forget about it. But it does open it up. I love the Thursday night. I think this game's going to be an absolute monster. As you said, highest over-under. And my vice captain option is Jameer Gibbs. Likely no Amon-Ra, no Sam Laporta, no Brock Wright, no Khalif Raymond, no someone else. They're missing a bunch of pieces on offense. He's going to be used as a quasi wide receiver, I think, a lot. Great in this format where receptions count, but also great because he's so damaging. And I think Dallas has got a lot better against the run, but they still aren't going to be able to protect against his play out of the backfield, through the air. So I think he's an absolute smash spot. Again, it's going to be one of those big ones. He's been going a little bit. What's his name? The guy from Chargers, Vidal. himself, a little bit red light, green light. He's gone 14, 70, 8, 73, 33, 99, 19. So if you keep that little pattern up, I'm going to guess he's going to have somewhere around the 70 to 78 range. And if he does that, it's one of those games where he could easily have 150 combined and 2 touchdowns. That's good for a 60 in this format, not including however many catches he has. It just sort of profiles that way. So I think if you've got him, he's a smash vice captain.
And a couple of other vice captaincy options for this week. I'll just smack both of these guys out, Secko, before we head on to the straight captaincy. Both quarterbacks kicking things off. Josh Allen, the old faithful, up against the Bengals in the early Monday morning slate here in Australia. This could be a massive shootout game. There's going to be plenty of points. I think this could be a sneaky game to outproduce the absolute gift that we have in Cowboys and Detroit. Joe Burrow back another week healthier with T. Higgins. There's going to be plenty of points flying around. Josh Allen didn't really produce the goods last week for us, coming off a 34. Massive bounce-back spot. It's a must-win for Allen. I think the Bengals, I know it is a must-win for those guys too, but the chances of them making the playoffs is just so slim. I think the Bills are definitely going to be wanting this one more, and he could go absolutely ballistic. Even better, that early Monday morning slate, so you've got a bit more time. And last but definitely not least, Lamar Jackson. If you do have him there, call us crazy. We're copping it. But again, up against the Steelers, a divisional matchup, another week to heal, coming off that short turnaround game that they had up against Thanksgiving last week against the Bengals, coming off a loss. Plenty of things for the Ravens to go in and train through and really prepare for this next week. A lot of mistakes to make up for. I think Lamar could absolutely smash in this spot. I wouldn't straight see him. Certainly not. I know I was mentioning I've brought him in this week. I'm not that crazy to put a straight C on a guy that has not been performing, but with a VC, you want to go for the boom plays. You want to go for that massive ceiling. And we know Lamar, if all things fire, he's probably got the highest ceiling in all of SuperCoach. So hopefully that 10-day turnaround allows his toe to heal and the rest of his body to heal, rather. Hopefully Zay Flowers has been working on catching the ball and not giving away offensive pass interferences. And the same with Isaiah Likely, not willing to fumble the ball there. But Secko, anything to mention on Lamar before as a VC option before we head to the captaincy options for the week?
No, we've spoken a lot at the risk of alienating a whole bunch of other people. Keep it brief, but yeah, look, it's the VC. The VC is a very very interesting thing in SuperCoach. It allows you to have a free hit at getting a really, 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 really big score. And then your C should be someone who you're a little bit more confident, probably a high floor guy. You're more confident in scoring, or not shitting the bed because people put captaincy on JSN last week. So anyone can have a bad score. You'd think he was probably the safest of all, and he's usually a great captaincy option. And that's what you sort of look for, but so it's never foolproof. But vice captaincy options, you want to go for someone that can have 99, like Jimmy Gibbs had a couple of weeks ago. Not everyone can do that. Lamar fully fit off 10 days break when his opponents only had 7 days break. At home when the opponent has to travel, if he's fit, they're the kind of games where he can have a monster. So that's it. If you don't believe us, that's fine. If you don't want to trust that we believe it, that's fine. But I think Lamar's a really good VC option. I'm not going to do it either, but I think it's a play. I can't do it because I can do it, but I would rather have a quarterback as my backup C. That's just how I roll, and both my quarterbacks play at the same time. So it's just a personal preference thing, but yeah, we'll leave it there. Hopefully, Lamar has a massive game, and we can come in Monday a little bit chirpier.
We'll wait and see how that plays out. And the good thing is, if you are running with a VC in that Thursday night football game, I know myself, I'm going to run with CeeDee Lamb. It does open up Josh Allen to be my straight C on that early Monday morning slate. He doesn't have to be a VC. You can kind of play it that way. But if you are not running with that, if you're running with a VC option from that earlier Monday morning slate, we're going to have to put up a captaincy option in a later game. How do you feel about this week, Secko? Who sticks out to you as your number one straight captaincy option for week 14?
So if you are going with the Josh or Lamar option, there's it limits a little bit what you can do. Um, we've got obviously Patrick Mahomes. It fits that safety of the sea. He's playing Houston though, so it's sort of it's proceed at your own peril a little bit with the captaincy there. I still think he's good enough to not absolutely shit the bed. Like I said, he's still got good weapons. He's still going to have to pass a lot. Um, so I feel like that he's an okay option. The other one is if, your Rams wide receiver that you've got, um, Puka or Adams at the Cardinals off a loss. Matthew Stafford's still very much in the MVP race. Sean McVay is still very much wanting Matthew Stafford to be in the MVP race. I feel like they'll be passing all game, and we know the Cardinals can pass all game as well to try and keep it a relevant game for longer. So I think Puka or Adams, whoever you've got there, they're both eight. So Mahomes playing on Sunday Night Football, and Puka and Adams playing at the 8:25 or 7:25 or the later um, Monday slate. I think they're both really good options if you've got either of those to bang on the sea, because I feel like they're both going to have a pretty good game.
And a couple of other options here, but these guys are in that early Monday morning slate. Couple of running backs. Again, if you do want to steer away from the norm with the quarterbacks and get a little bit potty, both of these running backs have massive upside and a great matchup that they are facing in week 14. Devon Achane for the Miami Dolphins up against the Jets in that early Monday morning slate. Achane just has a very, very safe floor. He's probably going to give you that 35-40 just very consistently, but the upside there, if he rips one off for a long rushing touchdown, if he catches a long bomb touchdown, plenty of opportunities there in volume to get HN up into a very plausible captaincy option this week up against the Jets. And Bucky Irving, if you do have him, if you brought him in this week, he's up against the Saints. Another week to heal off the numerous injuries that he's been dealing with after missing all that time. It's not the first game back for him, so not a lot of rust to shake off. He's going to see more snaps in this one. The Saints have been very beatable on the ground all year. You'd like to think with the Bucks could have Mike Evans back. They've got Chris Godwin firing. Baker, another week removed from that shoulder injury. They could really dominate the Saints in this one, and Bucky will just absolutely feast on the ground. They'll have plenty of lanes open. The box won't be nearly as stacked with all the weapons they have firing there for Baker behind center. So Bucky, if you do have him there and you want to get away from the quarterbacks and other normal captaincy options, he's an absolute smash hit for week 14.
That's a game it's one of the games I really expect to be just a massive beatdown. It may not go that way, and we get surprised in NFL each and every week, but I just can see that being one where they're out to a bunch of scores early, and Bucky does a lot of work in this game. So I have a feeling it's going to be 100 plus and a sort of touchdown as a minimum. It's going to be one of those things, a bunch of catches. He's going to sort of do it all. I just get that feeling. So I think it's a great C option. I can't see him, barring injury, having anything sort of below at least a passable captaincy score this week against the Saints.
That will really wrap things up for tonight, guys. If you are watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, absolutely give that a nice big smack. We love that. It's a nice free way to support the podcast. We will be back tomorrow night with our final show of the week, our week 14 primer. We've got our starts of the week, and it's gonna be a banger to close it out. We've got a lot of games to go through and run through start sits for traditional fantasy. Let us know in the comments too if you do have any other trade dilemma questions. Pop them down on the YouTube comment section. We'll be able to get to those before the week kicks off on Friday. And let us know how you feel about this trade talk segment. We switched things up a little bit, moved away from the usual going through position by position and trade-ins and trade-outs, trying to make it a little bit more accessible for you guys that are dealing with all of these teams and all of these players that are on bye. So, Secko, before we sign out, any final thoughts from you before we send this thing away?
No, it's week 14. There's 5 weeks to go. Don't forget, so any trade you do, you're probably going to have to keep that player for the next four weeks. So we do get sort of single week focused a lot in this format and in this game. But there is plenty out there. So make sure any move you make, we're all getting lower on trades at this point. If you're not, start using them because you're going to run out of time to use them all. But yeah, just make sure any move you make, you've got a plan for 2 weeks' time with that player, or trading them back out, or the money you make from them. We mentioned it a lot. So there's some key principles there. But any trade you're making, if you can make money on it, it's going to help you down the track, because every trade is going to be a single trade. Um, you're not going to be able to use two to get up to someone from a lesser player eventually. So it's all single trades from here. Make sure you got some cash in the bank. It'll trust me, it'll help you down the track.
Cash is king. Thanks for tuning into the Insight NFL podcast. We'll see you guys tomorrow night.